morning, everyone. It is my honor and pleasure to be standing in front of you today, especially to my fellow seafarers. I will also be discussing human factors in the new maritime landscape. As we all know, the shipping industry has significantly evolved from the prehistoric coal-fire boiler burner to conventional diesel engines up to the birth of automation, and now has officially entered the digital era. This, however, does not mean that seafarers will be replaced by robots or automated machines. Rather now, more than ever, is the best time to seize the opportunities for improved safety, more efficient vessel and port operations, and compliance to global environmental requirements. So the question is, how are we able to adapt to these technologies? The answer is because you guys, continue to learn. So one of the major breakthroughs of digitalization in shipping is the Internet of Things. Combined with AI and blockchain technology, it makes ships and port operations fast, seamless, and guess what? Efficient. One application of IoT with blockchain in shipping is the smart containers. At its simplest, IoT in the maritime sector refers to the use of connected sensors and devices to collect, transmit, and analyze data from vessels, containers, and ports. These data are transmitted online through satellite links for the operators to monitor the cargo, location, and status in real time, 24/7. Then, the smart contract. It is programmed that once the cargo reaches the destination and the prescribed temperature was maintained, then the payment can be released automatically upon arrival. So the result, if all goes well, the ship docks, the sensor confirms that the conditions were met, the money is transferred automatically. No waiting for weeks of invoice processing. That's efficiency. But if failure occurs, the blockchain records the exact second it happened. The insurance claim can be started automatically because the proof is undeniable. The next innovation is something that I would really be happy to have as a tool if I were still working on board. As troubleshooting machinery fault is a tedious job. One wrong analysis, boom, bigger problems. Hence, digital twin can substantially alleviate errors in finding solutions of engine malfunctions. This technology creates deep digital replica of a physical entity, whether it be ship or port, with enhanced predictive capabilities and optimized recommendations. Overall, the digital twin technology, when utilized to its full potential, will bring optimization to the next level. So, one of the reasons for adopting digitalization is to address emission concerns, or more popularly known as decarbonization. As climate change is one of the most urgent and complex challenges facing humans today, the goal is we need to limit the increase in average global temperature to well below 1.5 degrees. Otherwise, irreversible effect could happen, like much heavier typhoons or severe floodings. To effectively address issues of global pollution, again, we should understand its pollutants. So the sulfur oxide are the byproducts of sulfur content from fuels, which when introduced to the atmosphere and mixed with moisture will create sulfuric acid. On the other hand, nitrogen oxides, which are product of fossil fuels burnt in the combustion chamber, which if emitted to the atmosphere as well and mixed with moisture will create smog, both hazardous to health and environment. While greenhouse gas such as CO2, refrigerants, and volatile organic compounds, prevent heat from escaping into space and keeping the planet warm. Then, of course, there is the particulate matter, with which the microscopic solids or liquid droplets that are so small that they can be inhaled and cause serious problems. Then, these pollutants will be a major health and environment hazard if no intervention is carried out. In 2023, the IMO made its decarbonization targets more ambitious. This includes 20% reduction in emission by 2030, so that's 4 years from now, 70% reduction by 2040, and the ultimate goal of achieving the net zero emission by or around 2050. It was called the IMO Net Zero Framework. The strategy aims to achieve net zero emission from international shipping by around 2050 in different stages by implementing provisions. First, we need to reduce carbon emission from ships in various target dates. Second is charge a system of tariffs for CO2 emissions. And third is reward the companies by meeting its targets. To achieve these aspirations, IMO regulations have been implemented to address concerns in each pollutant. The SOx and NOx Emission Control Area, or ECAs, which now is expanded. The GHG Reduction Strategy and Net Zero Framework. The Carbon Efficiency Measure for ships. And of course, the key alternative fuels in which the operation will significantly reduce level of these pollutants. But then again, the path to digitalization and decarbonization will not just be a walk in the park, as challenges to meet efficiency, safety, and compliance all at the same time still poses an imminent threat to full implementation. As earlier mentioned, alternative fuels could greatly reduce level of emissions from most of the pollutants. However, each and every fuel has its own advantage and disadvantage. We have the readily available fuels such as LNG and LPG, which are safe to handle, though LNG requires cryogenic storage and has methane slips, while LPG require high-pressure tanks to store. The biofuels and biomethane, though renewable and sustainable, is still at high production cost due to specialized infrastructure. Ideally, hydrogen and ammonia would be the best fuel as there will be zero emission, but production, storage, including transportation, is currently limited and at the early stage, hence the high cost. Aside from the challenges brought by legislative, safety, and technological obstacles, we are also confronted with unique challenges in adapting to these technologies vis-a-vis building a positive safety culture on board. Over time, seafarers may develop informal practices and shortcuts to circumvent deficiencies in equipment design, poor procedures, or policies that are incompatible with the realities of daily operation. I know this very well when I was sailing. If seafarers are continuously exposed to these practices, they are more likely to perceive the risk as low. This leads to situations where poor practices and risky activities repeated over time are perceived as normal. Hence, the following factors should be considered for us to build a positive and safety culture on board that will enable sustainability of these new innovations. First, the cybersecurity. As digitalization will require internet connectivity and cloud storage, there will always be a cybersecurity threat that could breach the integrity of the system. It is imperative for us, the users, to know the safeguards that will enable us to protect the key and sensitive data and information. So remember, common knowledge on identifying malwares and phishing attacks is a must. Number 2 is complacency. As we all know, several studies have proven that huge percentage of maritime accidents, I'm sorry for that, I know you have mentioned it earlier, are caused by human errors. With the birth of automation and digitalization, manual operation can greatly be reduced. However, there are still a lot of operations that require human intervention. This is where complacency in the workplace could affect the safety of the ship, especially when crew become more reliant in technology than their instinct. So remember, automation is good, over-complacency to automation is bad. Third, situational awareness. Along with complacency is the lack of situational awareness. I've taught a lot of engineers in resource management and common, but very significant deficiency among them is being unaware of what's happening around them, especially in emergency and chaotic situations. Although new technologies can bring us more convenience in monitoring various operations, it is essential that seafarers keep using their senses to be always on top of every situation. Remember, our 5 senses keep us in control. Fourth is the skills erosion. Once complacency and lack of situational awareness becomes a habit on board, skills erosion comes in. One good example of skills erosion is the evaluation of engine performance. From the manual performance diagram, now we can send it to AI, which could take only few minutes or even seconds to generate result. Yes, this might be fast and convenient, but crew on board can just rely on this even without understanding how the analysis was done. So remember, enhance your competence, be relevant. Next, I remember when I first adjusted the HMI panel or human-machine interface of the Alpha lubricator. My chief engineer and electrician was behind me to confirm every action before doing so. I told them it's much better to do it by themselves, however, they refused. Since cylinder lubrication is high critical to the engine, it is not without nervousness that anything could go wrong during the adjustment. Hence, familiarity with the equipment is vital for effective and optimal use. So remember, the best foundation of confidence is knowledge. And finally, because I want to show my last video, leadership as the primary driver of safety culture on board should be kept with top priority and will encompass mere regulatory compliance to foster an environment where safety is a core value and not just a rule. In conclusion, building safety culture on board doesn't rely solely on technical knowledge and competence of ship's crew. It is of an essence to combine it with a positive behavioral approach which will greatly affect its successful implementation. So how do we further enhance ourselves in preparation for these new technologies and innovation? Let me call on my 20-year-old self to finish the presentation on my behalf. Thank you.